Hi folks, and welcome to this special edition double review of not one but two TV series, Droids and Ewoks. Usually for these kind of celebrations I seem to review TV series, and so I thought, okay, for 2,000 subscribers I need to review two. And it's obvious, the ones I've been wanting to review for, oh gosh, a while now, but I won't get into it anywhere near the timeline anytime soon, is the Droids and Ewoks cartoon. So I wanted to take this special moment to review both of these for you and kind of give you my thoughts and give you a perspective on what these cartoons were like. Before I start, you cannot get these on DVD. You can get like a few episodes that came out on DVD. You would have to get illegal copies of these, which are readily available if you know where to look. Go to any Comic-Con, they have them there. I think I'm on my second round of copies because my first ones are really, really old and they were freezing up. So I actually thought about doing this review a long time ago, and so I actually watched all these last year and took a bunch of notes that I'm going to read off of and kind of talk about each one individually. So the first one I want to talk about is, of course, the Droids cartoon. Now, the Droids cartoon series only went one season. It lasted 13 episodes and it was from 1985 to 1986. Now you're thinking, okay, 13 episodes, it doesn't seem that exciting. Droids, oh well. Anthony Daniels did return as the voice of C-3PO, which is really cool. It did add some weight. Of course, back then you didn't know Anthony Daniels was going to come back and do C-3PO forever, right? He does that for the Clone Wars later on, TV series. So he was always happy to lend his voice, but it's always good, because I think if it was voiced by someone else, as C-3PO was, it wouldn't feel the same, or it'd feel like a lesser canon, if that makes sense. So speaking of canon, one thing you will enjoy if you watch the Droids cartoon series, or you haven't, one thing that you will enjoy while watching it is all the continuity references. Not to the other books and comic books, but to the prequel movies and maybe episode 7. Let me explain. All right, the first one that you heard first in the Droids cartoon series was about the moons of Bogdan. Wait a minute. I remember hearing about the moons of Bogdan. Isn't that where Darth Tyrannus is from? That's what we're told, right? The moons of Bogdan. So the thing is, they got that from the Droids cartoon series. Oh, that's not all. When in episode 1, Qui-Gon says, oh yeah, they're pod racing on Malastare, very dangerous stuff. Okay, when was racing on Malastare first discussed? In the Droids cartoon. Seriously, they talk about racing on Malastare. I'm not making this up. It's in the cartoon series. It's blow your mind incredible. Also, you have a character named Kylo Ren. Not Kylo. That's the one that J.J. Abrams did. This is Kylo Ren. Now, I'm going to bet you anything, JJ's around my age. He probably grew up watching this Droids cartoon series, and whoever came up with the name obviously was influenced by the Droids cartoon series. That is such a close name. All they did was change the B to an L. You can't say, yeah, I made it up out of the blue. I didn't know about the cartoon series. No, I think those people did because they're around my age and they were like, Kylo Ren was a cool name, but we already have a Kybo. Let's call him Kylo Ren. Wouldn't it have been awesome if Kylo Ren, instead of being, Han's son, would have been the guy from Droids? In fact, when I first heard the name, I didn't say this on episode 7 videos. I don't think I did. But I was like, wait, Kylo Ren? Oh, Kylo. Okay, I thought they're making the guy from Droids canon? What? But it even influenced, in my opinion, the bad guy for episode 7. But wait, that's not all, because in the Droids cartoon series, they go into a 50s diner that is run by a 4-armed Dexter Jettster-like alien. Now, he doesn't look like Dexter Jettster, he's different, but it's a 4-armed alien owning a 50s diner. Exactly what George Lucas put into his movie in episode 2. It was first seen in Droids. I don't even have to reach for any of these connections here. There's actually a planet in Droids where it's full of holes. There are holes in the ground everywhere. People live in these holes. Just like the planet we saw in episode 3. There's so many amazing connections between the cartoon and the prequels. It is mind-boggling. I'm not done yet. You also have a wheel, the wheel that General Grievous rides, the wheel bike from Episode 3. You first saw that in the Droids cartoon. Now, what makes this even more amazing is that this actually could fit within the continuity perfectly, because you could say, well, the little upgrades that you see in the cartoon came after Episode 3, because this cartoon series takes place, of course, after Episode 3 and before Episode 4. And so it makes sense it would get some modifications, but it's the same wheel bike. George just took it from Droids and put it in his movie. Another one, the Tung species that was featured as a pod racer in Episode 1, he was actually first invented in the Star Wars Droids cartoon series. George took him from the Star Wars Droids cartoon series and put him in Episode 1. I'm not done. Ben Burtt, who is the sound designer at Lucasfilm, does all the sound stuff, you know, for R2 and whatnot. He also worked on the cartoon series. And one of the things that he wrote in was a character called Mungo Baobab, which actually, in some of the Shadows of the Empire source books, you will hear about Mungo Baobab, because they were big fans of the Droid series too. In fact, I think on the CD, it has some weird, like, not EU, but it has a little, you know, interstellar, whatever, something expanded universe that tells you that, hey, this song was first discovered by Mungo Baobab. I was like, wait a minute, what? The guy from Droids is here too? What does he have to do with Shadows of the Empire? Nothing. There's a bunch of fans of Star Wars Droids, and they connected it anywhere. Now, going back to Ben Burtt, he created Mungo Baobab for all these episodes, and he played Baobab in Episode 1. He made a guest appearance. Now, not Mungo Baobab, it was one of the Baobabs, like one of his relatives. Folks, there are so many connections from the prequel movies and Droids, it's unbelievable. In fact, watch it for yourself. You may spot more connections than I did. Like I said, I watched this last year and I was just making all these references of all this stuff they pulled from Episode 1. Now, before you start going crazy and go, wow, why shouldn't Droids be canon? Let me explain a little something. George Lucas actually helped out in the production of Droids. This whole thing that George doesn't care about the expanded universe, it's so silly, because he does care about Star Wars. He does care about it gets rolled out there. He wants it to be quality stuff. And Droids was no difference. He said, okay, we're going to make a Droids cartoon. I want it to be good. And he's the one that came up with all these ideas for them to use. Later on, George would borrow back those ideas from the cartoon series and put them in the movies. That's how much he loved these. So the cartoon series, and this is ridiculous why Dave Filoni's Clone Wars was the only one to get T-canon status. Why? Because George was heavily involved. Oh, really? George was so heavily involved in Droids, he re-borrowed back all those ideas and put them into his movies, his canon. Unbelievable the significance that Star Wars Droids, a 80s cartoon with an awesome 80s intro music that was just perfect, it screams 80s, that made such a big impact on those newer movies. And not many people realize that. In fact, watching it the first time I'd ever seen it was, I think it was in 2005. And I think all the prequels had come out by then. And I remember calling Bruce from Princes of the Universe, my best friend, and going, Bruce, they're showing everything. They said Moons of Bogdan. They said pod racing on Malastare. They said this, they said that. And I was like, I can't believe all these connections. And then as I got more and more interviews, read more about the Droids cartoon series, I found out that's because George gave them those ideas. So, wow, for that reason alone, Droids is an amazing cartoon series to watch. As it is, Droids, the cartoon series, it's good. It's dated, but there are tons of connections within the prequels. In fact, you may watch it and find more than I did. Who knows? So let's move from Droids and let's talk about Ewoks. Now, Ewoks went 2 seasons, a total of 35 episodes, and it was from 1985 to 86, and then 86 to 87. Now, there's not that much continuity stuff, references within Ewoks. Ewoks is you know, the adopted stepbrother that no one really wanted, I guess, in the EU. It gets zero references, really. There's an admiral at the very end of the very last episode for Ewoks cartoon is called Battle for the Sunstar, where the Empire comes in, and they're trying to get the Sunstone from the Ewoks. And in it, there's an admiral called Admiral Kaz, and I thought that was really cool, Admiral Kaz. I want to know more about him, but there are no references about him in any other EU material. Admiral Screed from the Droids cartoon series, however, he got his own biography in Jason Fry's Guide to Warfare, where it turns out that he and General Jan Dodonna were best friends, and then Screed had the accident. He kind of went insane, felt that, you know, everything, you know, life had been treated unfair. He got he got to go on backwater worlds, you know, crappy jobs. He just got bitter and more greedy and twisted, and he and Jan grew apart. And I loved how they gave him a character, one of the cartoons from Droids. But that's because Jason Fry, again, was a huge Droids fan. Now, growing up, I never watched Droids. It didn't come on in my area. Back in the day, kids, cartoons came out in certain areas. I remember when Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles first appeared, it was only at my grandmother's house I could watch it in Alabama. And where I lived in Mississippi at the time, we didn't get that cartoon. Not everyone got the same cartoons growing up. That's kind of weird to think about. Folks, in my day, cartoons, you know, well, TV itself went to bed at night. You know, they'd disconnect the channel. It'd be, you know, just dead air until 6 in the morning. You hear the American flag, you see the American flag and the national anthem being played. Really, it's a real thing. Look it up. It's how things used to be growing up back in the day. But anyway, I digress here. The Ewoks cartoon series was one I got to watch a lot, and it does mean a lot to me. In fact, watching those again, I put down my pen and paper because I realized there weren't going to be any connections to any other EU stuff, except it does explore the world of the Ewoks. It explores Endor. And I mean, Kevin J. Anderson's Star Wars Illustrated Universe does take some stuff from the cartoon series, like the Dulocs and whatnot, and use them, and he talks about those. But to be honest, that's really the only connection you would have with that and anything else. Other than that, people kind of left it alone. It does have some great characters in it. Wicked, Teebo, Logray, Kanisha, Latoya, doggone, I forgot her name, Latasha, doggone it. I guess it wasn't that big one, Latara. That was her name. Dang it. Anyway, I remember Nate from Timeline Gold and I talking about this on a Prince of the Universe episode where he calls Latara a hussy, and you know, the way she was looking all seductively. But that's, hey, nothing wrong with a good-looking Ewok. Folks, if you don't know me, I already love Ewoks, right? So the Ewok cartoon was part of the reason why. Now, if you think about it, Ewoks had kept their popularity throughout most of the 80s. So when they premiered in the movie Return of the Jedi in 1983, they also got 2 TV movies right after that, and then the cartoon series rolled up after that. So we were enjoying Ewoks all the way to 1987, and I'll be honest, I was loving it. I loved this cartoon. I loved to see all the characters. It really explored all their families, you know, who was who. Deej is in it from Return of the Jedi, and from the movie, the Ewok movies too, which I'll talk about maybe next year. But it had a lot of good stuff to kind of explore Endor on. So that's one thing I can say about it. The other thing I can say is that I actually got to talk to the cartoonist years ago. It's probably 11 years ago. I was working for DirecTV at the time. And I was watching through the burned copies of the DVDs for the first time since I was a kid. And I remember I knew this guy's name because it always popped up in the credits as one of the cartoonists, one of the artists for the show. And as I was working at DirecTV, I was setting someone up. Someone was trying to buy DirecTV from me, and he said his name. I went, that's weird. That's the name of the artist from the cartoon. And so while I'm setting it up, I go, hey man, I got to ask you a strange question here. Did you ever draw cartoons back in the 80s? And he paused. He went, how'd you know that? He said, what cartoon are you mentioning? And I went, the Ewoks cartoon? And he went, how did you know? Now, he said, I said, well, I watched them on DVD. He went, they're on DVD now? He said, oh, I need to get me a copy. And I was like, well, DVDs that you can't really buy. You know, I had to explain to him I pirated it. But I was watching, I said, your name always pops in the credits. He went, does it? He said, you know, I never knew if they popped up. See, sometimes they pop our names up in the credits, sometimes they wouldn't. He said, oh, that's really cool. And so he told me about what it was like working, you know, for Lucasfilm. Actually, he's working for Nelvana, which was the cartoon company that got the rights to do the Ewoks cartoon. And he said, you know, the correspondence, he never got to talk to George Lucas, but they did get to hear that George Lucas loved the Ewoks cartoon. Loved it enough to give them a second season. Lucasfilm approved a second season, and all he heard was that George loved the cartoon series, because that's what they were told. They said, hey guys, George says he really loves your stuff. And he was like, wow, George Lucas is watching my cartoon, which I gotta be honest, I'd act the same way. But one of the cool things about these cartoons in general was Paul Dini wrote episodes for droids in Ewoks. Don't know who Paul Dini is? Well, did you ever watch Batman, the animated series? Yep, that was the writer of that series. And wasn't that one of the best cartoon series of all time? So it's kind of funny that he kind of got his start, or one of his starts, writing for the Star Wars cartoons, Droids and Ewoks. Watching this Ewoks cartoon series just reminded me of the time we'd get home from school, Ma would make us a snack, homemade Chex Mix, before Chex even started selling them in a pre-made bag. She'd make us some, we'd eat that or a little snack, and we'd watch Ewoks. And I have so many fond memories of watching that show. When it went off the air, you really didn't know, you know, back then if shows were going to get renewed or not, because there was no internet. It's just that after, you know, summer reruns went through and then you didn't see it on the new lineup, you knew they'd stop making them. You're like, oh, sad face. But then there's like a billion other cartoons I was watching at the time, so I soon forgave and forgot it. But, you know, Ewoks was a good cartoon series. Would you like it? If you're old like me, yes. If you're not, you probably wouldn't, because there's some cheesy stuff in there. I mean, like there's a Leaf King, there's a Moon or Sun King, a Earth, Wind, Fire King, you know, stuff like that, Elemental Kings, and kind of hokey, really cartoony stuff. And you're thinking, ooh, is this canon, Matt? And actually it is. I remember Leland Chee talking about this a long time ago, saying, he was talking about droids and the cartoons, and yes, they are. And the Ewoks, maybe, you know, because of all the cartoony stuff, you know, maybe they come up with an idea of how to fit that within continuity and make it have sense, to have it make sense. Now, what you don't know is that there's actually a short story, almost a novel, that's hopefully coming out soon. I can't talk much about it, but I have read it. It was going to come out on StarWars.com. It was going to be one of those little, you know, like a six-part, you know, exploring the expanded universe and all the oddities that within it. And it got stopped, of course, when Disney bought them out. They said, hey, they put a kibosh on that story. Hopefully it'll come back out soon, because it does talk. One of the things it talks about was the Ewoks cartoon series. And it puts it in perfect perspective. It says Ewoks are like, you know, some long-lost tribe that's been discarded from civilization. If you think about it, what if there's a tribe on an island that didn't know what was going on around the world today, and it saw a man parachuting from the sky? Maybe it saw a plane flying over and a man parachuting out of it. What would they think? They think, oh, wow, that's a huge bird, you know, because they don't know what airplanes are. And look at this guy, he's flying down toward us. They wouldn't know what a parachute was. They think it was a part of him, maybe. And even if they depicted drawing this, they would probably draw wings, you know, like feathers as the bird, and make a funky looking bird, because their mind would have forgotten it. Or seeing the guy fly, they probably would have elaborated him having wings too, when it was just a parachute. And he's saying that's what the Ewoks are doing in the cartoon series. The cartoon series and the comic books are from the eyes of the Ewoks. So for them, when a mountain's talking to them, an actual mountain with a mouth and eyes and laughing and crying and having tears, they're actually just looking at a mountain and it's raining and floods coming down. Ah, mountain will cry, you know, like, you know, Native Americans or something. And it makes sense when you think about it that way. So when you think about it that way, and if that would have come out, it was supposed to come out on StarWars.com. Who knows? Maybe they'll let them re-release it like Abel G. Pena's. But if so, you'll get to see where they had every intention of bringing Ewoks into sea canon status like everything else. Another beautiful thing about the expanded universe. It left nothing behind. No matter how silly they say, okay, we can make sense of this. We can straighten this out. We can uniform it. We can put some retcons on it and have it fit perfectly with everything. These guys were geniuses who wrote this stuff. And the guy who wrote this is a genius as well. And I really hope that story comes out sooner rather than later, because it's really worth it. Especially the part that interests me, of course, was those Ewoks cartoons. Oh, and by the way, I actually, the artist, the cartoonist from the Ewoks cartoon was so, you know, happy that I had remembered or recognized his name. He actually sent me an actual cartoon steal of the cartoon series. It was with Tebow. I tried looking for it earlier and I couldn't find it. For some reason, one of his arms are missing. I guess because the arm was in motion or something. I don't know. Maybe it was a blurred motion for that shot and they didn't come in, but they would layer these. It's clear steels. They'd layer them, take pictures of them. Watch Disney Behind the Magic or something if you want to see how cartoons are made. But anyway, he gave me one of the stills they had, and so I have an actual piece of the cartoon. And even to the corner it says it was a Tebow titled cartoon. Anyway, so I really loved it. Now, should you get them? Again, yes, I think they're fun. If you're younger, you're not going to like these. You may like droids a little bit because of all the prequel references. Ewoks are basically for people like me who just get nostalgia seeing them again and going, "Aw, I remember watching these." And they're so much fun. All right, so not to get too sappy, that's all the time I have for now. Folks, I will see you next time with another video.